Hey guys, welcome, Chris again, and welcome to the third part of our IELTS Fundamentals course. And today we're going to focus on reading. First of all, just let me thank you for all the really lovely, positive comments that you've left under the first two lessons. So it's amazing to see so many of you commenting and liking and just saying how much you are benefiting from it. My whole approach to this is basically what I do is I just think if I was an IELTS student, what would I want my teacher to teach me? If I was a student struggling with this, how would I want someone to help me? And that's basically what I'm doing with this course, and to give you not just an overview, but going in depth and really thinking about the crucial things, the crucial elements that make a big difference to your score. So we covered speaking in lesson 1, we covered listening in lesson 2, and today we're going to focus on reading. So what will we do in this lesson? We're going to look at what does not work. One of the main problems with IELTS is there's a huge amount of bad information out there, misinformation, confusing information, and conflicting information, especially with reading and writing. So it's really, really important that we address what does not work so that you are not wasting your time and you're not jeopardizing your chances of getting the score that you need by focusing on things that just do not work. We'll look at what does work. And then we're going to look at, in detail, we're going to look at two specific types of reading question. What I did was I just picked the two questions that I get asked about the most. So we obviously can't get into detail on every single type of reading question because that would mean that the video would be like 6 hours long, and nobody would want that either. So what I'm doing is I'm choosing the two most important ones, and then I'll show you how you can take things to the next level and how you can look at all of the other types of questions. We'll look at that at the end of the video. And I'm going to give you an action plan. So I'm going to, what I like to do is at the end of these lessons, allow you to move forward with your studies in whatever way, shape or form that is, but to give you real action that you can take in your life and that you can use to help you move forward and get the score you need and forget about this silly test. All right. So, a common question I get asked when we're doing, reading is, does this apply to both academic and general training? Yes, this lesson applies to both academic and general training. The style of text, so the reading text you will get will be different. So general training people will get general texts and academic people will get academic texts. However, the type of questions, true, false, not given, matching headings, all of those different types of questions are exactly the same, and the strategies are exactly the same, and the advice is exactly the same. So what I do is I just treat reading the same for both general training and academic. So if you are either one of those, you're in the right place. Okay, so what does not work? If you ask most people how to improve your IELTS reading score, they'll say things like, you should practice more. You should improve your time management. You should read lots of academic texts or academic books. You should skim and you should scan. So this is probably the most common advice that I see online or when I'm looking at other teachers and what they're telling their students and what my students tell me that their old teachers or their cousin or their friend told them about the reading test. Let's look at why none of these actually work. None of these actually help you improve your score. Many of you might be thinking, that's not right, you're talking nonsense. All of these sound like very reasonable ways to improve your score. So let's talk in detail about why these don't work so you're not wasting your time. Okay, so first one is you should just practice more. You should just do lots and lots and lots and lots of practice tests. So the number of students that come to me and say, Chris, I've done every single practice test in the world and my score is not getting any better. And normally what they say to me is not, do you think that I'm maybe not doing the right thing? What they normally say to me is, can you show me where to get more practice tests? So my first question is, why do you think doing the same thing over and over and over again is going to magically work when it has not worked for you in the past? So what I'm going to do is tell you a little story to prove this to you about the driving test. So imagine that you're learning how to drive. If you've learned how to drive in the past, you'll know what I'm talking about. If not, when you learn how to drive, you have to do a driving test. All right, very, very similar to the IELTS writing test. And in where I live, where I grew up, when you are 17, you can do the IELTS test. So I had two friends. One friend, let's call him Johnny, and he grew up on a farm. So his father was a farmer and he had lots of land, and he was a really, really lucky kid because his farmer father, sorry, his father, who was a farmer, that's difficult to say actually, had lots of land, and Johnny was really lucky because his dad gave him this old car. So it was like an old beat up car. It still worked, but you know, it wasn't allowed on the road. And from about 12 years old, 11 or 12 years old, his dad allowed him to drive the car around the farm. He didn't allow him on the public roads, but he allowed him just to drive around. So Johnny was constantly practicing driving. For about 5 years, he was driving pretty much every single day on his farm. He never had anyone help him learn how to drive. His dad was too busy. He never read any books about it. He never had an instructor. He was just self-taught, but he had a huge amount of practice. Then I had another friend called Emma, and she had never been in a car or been behind the wheel of a car in her life. She had 0 lessons. She was completely new to driving, but her dad was quite rich. He was a lawyer, and what he did was he bought her driving lessons. So she went and had a driving instructor sitting beside her, and she had many, many lessons where the driving instructor was telling her exactly what to do, what her mistakes were, how to fix those mistakes. Who do you think passed their test first time? Do you think Johnny with a huge amount of practice, over 5 years of practice, or Emma with just a little bit of practice, but proper practice, effective practice? Well, it was Emma. Emma passed, no problem at all. Johnny had to, he failed his test, I think, 5 times, and it took him about 2 years to actually get his test, and he was so angry. He was like, I've been driving for a long time, should be no problem for me, I know how to drive, it's no problem. But he had developed such bad habits from just practicing constantly and never correcting those bad habits. So if somebody says to you, just practice more, practice without actually learning from your mistakes is not going to help you. So if you are doing every single practice test, reading practice test after reading practice test, and just keep doing that, you're not going to improve. In fact, it can cause you to go backwards. Sometimes I've had students who have got a band 6.5, and then they've done lots and lots and lots of practice tests because they need to go to a 7. They go and do the test and they go down to a 6 or 5.5, and they're like, what happened? Is this test some sort of scam? What is happening? It's like, no, you just developed really, really bad habits and no one corrected you on those bad habits, and you didn't learn anything from actually practicing. So you need to either do it yourself and reflect on your own mistakes. So if you're doing practice, after you practice, after you finish, correct your own mistakes. Think about why you made those mistakes, or have a teacher sit with you, look at your mistakes, and actually guide you, like same as a driving instructor, on how to improve those mistakes. So some students who just practice, they might spend 5 hours doing 4 practice tests. With my students, what I do is I'll do 1 practice test, and then the other 4 hours, I will either be getting them to reflect on what they're doing, find out what their mistakes are, teaching them how to improve on those weaknesses. So you see the difference between 1 hour of practice and then 4 hours of reflection and taking action and learning versus just 5 hours of practicing again and again and again. So the point is, practice alone will not help you. Other thing, very, very common thing people will say is you should just improve your time management. So many students believe that the only reason they are failing the reading test is because of timing. They think that if they have more time or better time management, they'll do better. So it's very common for students to come to me and say, I should be getting a band 7. I should be getting a band 8, but I ran out of time. It's not that I'm bad at reading. It's not that I do not have the skills. It's just a time management issue. And all I have to do is fix my time management issue, and then I'll get a good score, which never happens. This is complete nonsense. So let's look at why this is not true. So let's look at this. This is Usain Bolt, who is number 1 here. He's finishing first. And then we have all the people behind him. So Usain Bolt, well, I still believe he's the fastest man in the world. He's retired now, I believe. But I think this was at in the Olympics, the 100-meter final. And he is number 1, and everyone else is slower than him. So do the people that finished 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, do they have time management issues, or do they have running issues? They're just not as fast as Usain Bolt. People who say that the only reason why I failed the reading test was because of time management issues, that's the same as these guys that are coming behind Usain Bolt saying, oh, I'm just as fast as Usain Bolt, I just need time management techniques, or I just need time management tips. You see how much this doesn't really make sense when you actually think about it. So you don't have a time management issue. You have a reading issue. You might have a reading skills issue. You might have a test skills issue. You might have a strategy issue. You might have vocabulary issues. You might have grammar issues. You might have all of those issues. But you do not have a time management issue. You're just not as good at doing the reading test yet as you want to be. So fix those issues, and you'll have no need to worry about time management. So often students will come to me and they'll say this thing about time management, and then I'll analyze their tests, and we'll work through a test together, and I'll say, well, your vocabulary needs work, your grammar needs work, you do have no strategy for any of the different types of question, you're completely unaware of how to use the different reading skills that you need. What we're going to do is we're not going to work on time management, we're going to work on all of these different reading issues. And then when they work on them and improve them, time management just doesn't even exist for them. What they do is they just do the test, they get the score, and they finish early. Focus on that rather than thinking that you have a time management issue. Another common thing that people will say is just read lots of academic texts. So all you need to do is just read lots of IELTS style, whatever that means, or academic texts, whatever that means. So it is true that you need to read consistently before your test. That is absolutely true. The person that reads for 15 minutes or 20 minutes or 30 minutes or 1 hour a day for however long it is before your test is going to be at a huge advantage compared to someone who just doesn't read anything. The test should not be the very first time you read in English for an hour. Reading in a foreign language for 1 hour and totally focusing and being under pressure is a very, very difficult thing to do. What happens with a lot of students is the very first time they ever try to do that is on test day. Get used to reading in English and focusing for a long time. If you only have 15 minutes, do 15 minutes. But if you have an hour, do an hour. Reading will also help your vocabulary, your grammar, your idea development, absolutely everything for your writing, for your speaking, for your listening, for your reading. Reading is going to help all areas. So it's really, really important that you do consistently read. But the type of text that you read is also very important. Reading academic texts every day, like I have some students, and what they did was they just downloaded academic journals, like PhD level journals or journals written by university professors in like academic style subjects. And this is what happened to them. If you do that, you're going to end up like this guy. So this guy is preparing for his IELTS, and his teacher has told him to download really complicated, complex academic texts and read those every day. You're going to be so bored that A, you'll probably fall asleep, or B, the most likely thing to happen is you're just not going to consistently do it. You're not going to consistently read every day in English because you will be so bored, you'll be so frustrated with the text because you have no interest in something. If you are really interested in something, you will learn at a far higher rate than if it's really, really boring. So consistency is key when it comes to reading each day. Read something you enjoy. It could be cricket, it could be football, it could be cooking, it could be gardening, it could be sewing, it could be movies. The most important thing is that you are just reading, not the actual subject, not the topic of what you're reading about. The most important thing is that you are actually reading, not what you are reading. If you spend more time thinking about what to read than actually reading, you're probably just procrastinating. So I'll often tell students, like, you should be reading the news every day. That's a really good idea. And instead of them going and doing that, what they'll do is they'll come back to me and they'll say, like 2 weeks later, oh, I couldn't decide which newspaper to read. Teacher, can you tell me the best newspaper for IELTS? It's like, there isn't one that is in English. And I think this is just a way of people just delaying actually doing any work. What you read is not important. The fact that you are reading consistently every day in English is important. So read what you love and read it every day. Pick something. And if you don't know how to find that in the day and age where we have Google, where you can just type in any keyword and find millions of articles about that keyword, or millions of blogs, or millions of news stories. If you can't do that, then just give up now. But I'm sure 99.999% of you will be able to do that. Other thing that people say is skimming and scanning. So all you have to do is just skim and scan and you'll magically get a band 9. So many teachers, blogs, books claim that skimming and scanning are the secret to getting a good score. Ask most students and they'll say the same thing. So I always like to hear from my students, especially students that are struggling. It's like, well, what should you do? What do you think that is working? What do you think will really work in the reading test? And they'll say, most of the time, they say, oh, I just need to skim and then I need to scan and then I'll find the right answer. Ask students how it actually helps them, so both practically and theoretically, and 99% of them will be unable to give an answer. So when a student says to me, oh, the secret to getting a high score is skimming and scanning, and I say, well, theoretically, what does skimming mean? What does scanning mean? Very few students will be able to even tell you. Practically, how does that help you find the correct answer? Because that's the only thing that matters. The only thing that matters is, can you find the correct answer or not? How does skimming and scanning help you do that? Students have no idea. So is this poor teaching or does this just not work? Bit of both. Let's look at it. Let's look at another few pictures that will help me demonstrate this. So I want you to imagine that you're flying over the New York area, and what I want you to do is, the correct answer is the McDonald's in Times Square in New York. I want you to find the McDonald's restaurant in Times Square. So skimming is if you are flying over New York and you're just getting a general idea of where everything is and what it is. So, okay, here's Manhattan in the middle. To the left is New Jersey. We have the river. Okay, I'm pretty sure I understand that this is New York. All right, so that's skimming. Then we need to get into scanning. Scanning is where you go deeper into the text and you find the location. So not the correct answer. You find the location of where the correct answer might be, where it probably is. So you're finding the area inside New York here to find the correct answer. So scanning is just all about location, really. The correct answer is you actually need to look at it in detail and then decide what the correct answer is. And that skill is way, 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 way more important than skimming and scanning. Skimming and scanning are important. Skimming helps you understand what's going on. Scanning helps you find the general area of the text where it might be. But you actually have to look at the text and understand the text, understand the questions. Close reading is the skill that it really, really makes a difference. And then, as you can see over here to the right, you can go and find your correct answer. McDonald's in Times Square. Will you be asked to find McDonald's in the reading test? No. This is just a demonstration to show you that skimming is kind of important, scanning is kind of important, but it's way more important to be able to close read, to understand exactly what is happening, and then you'll be able to find the correct answer. So skimming can help you understand the general meaning of the text. That's important, but it doesn't help you identify the correct answer. Scanning can help you locate where the answer is, but again, it doesn't help you identify the correct answer. But the most important skill is actually understanding the text, the question, and making a decision about the answer. That is the most important thing, and that is the thing that is overlooked in most IELTS classes. So then, Chris, you've told us all these things that don't work. Please tell me what does work. That's probably on your mind right now. Okay, let's get into that. So you have to appreciate that there are several different types of question on the reading test. True, false, not given, yes, no, not given, matching headings, summary completion, sentence completion, short answers, labeling, many different types of reading question. The first step towards getting the score that you need is appreciating that fact that not all questions are exactly the same. So one of the most frustrating things is when I see students who have been told that all questions are the same, just skim, then scan, then find the answer, and that's all you have to do. That is very misleading. So each of these different types of questions, here are just 4 examples, test different sub-skills. So we're going to look at matching headings and true, false, not given, and you'll see that they are testing completely different things, because the IELTS reading test is not just testing your reading in general. What they're doing is they're testing different sub-skills that are very important when you move to an English-speaking country. Each of these requires a different approach and a different unique strategy. All right, so they are different questions, so they require a different approach and a different unique strategy. It would be like if you were in your hometown and you wanted to go to 5 different places in your hometown. Would you take the exact same route to those 5 different places? Of course you wouldn't. They are all different. They all require a different approach. They all require a different strategy. So matching headings, what are the skills tested? So what we're going to do now is go a little bit deeper into matching headings and a little bit deeper into true, false, not given, and then you'll be able to understand what you have to do, what action you have to take for all questions. So understand the main idea of the paragraph. Differentiate between 2 or more similar headings. Scan to find location of possible answers. Understand synonyms and paraphrasing. And select the appropriate answer based on all the information. So these are the different sub-skills and the different things that they want you to do within a matching headings question. Many students are doing these, but they're completely unaware of them. But being aware that these are the different things that are being tested puts you at a big advantage, because if you know the different things that you're doing, then you have far more power over that question, and you can manipulate that question to your advantage. So, understanding the main idea of the paragraph, differentiating between 2 or more similar headings. You're going to have 2 or 3 headings that all look the same. Scanning, so finding where the questions are. Understanding that not all words are going to be directly related. So if you see the word premium, like we looked at this in the listening test in the question, it might say something like first class or VIP or something like that in the text. So synonyms and paraphrasing are very important. And then the most important thing is you must make a judgment call. You must select the appropriate answer based on all the information given. So let me show you how you can find these questions for free. So Google is your friend here, guys. So a lot of people say, like, where do I find IELTS practice questions? Google IELTS practice questions, and you'll see here the British Council website comes up, the official IELTS website comes up, the IDP website comes up. These are all really good. There are a number of other websites that are fake and will have fake questions. Don't use them because they're highly misleading. But if you go into like the official ones, British Council, IDP, Cambridge, the official IELTS site, you'll find real questions. So if we click on that, it'll take us here. And we've got a lot of sample test questions from the official IELTS website. So what we can do here is we can click into matching headings. And matching headings looks like this. So let me show you, let me put this, zoom in first. So what most students do with matching headings is they'll look at the list of headings first, and they'll quickly look at these. They'll get a little bit confused because some of them are similar, but they won't really spend enough time understanding what they mean. Then what they'll do is they'll go down to the text, and what they'll do is they'll just read like the first sentence or the first two sentences and hope that that will enable them to understand the meaning of the sentence. Or even worse, what they'll do is they will read out absolutely every single word very, very slowly, and then they'll run out of time. So they'll go through everything. Then they'll go back up here, and what they'll do is they'll try to match each one of these back down with particular paragraphs. So that is a very bad way to do it, and that is a very confusing way to do it, and not a very effective way to do it. Let me show you how I would do this question and how my students do this question. So what I do first is, if this type of question is on the test, I'd encourage my students to do this one first. So if you look at a section and it has a matching heading, some matching headings questions in it, do this one first. Why? Because it requires you to get an overview of the whole text. It requires you to get the general meaning of the whole text first, which is a very useful thing to do first, because it will make the other questions easier, because understanding the general meaning of the text will just make all the other questions much easier. Don't look at the headings, all right? You'll understand why in a minute, but what I tell my students is, when you see a matching headings question, do not look at all the options first. Read each paragraph to understand the general meaning. Now, it will depend on the type of text that you get and the particular paragraphs, but what you should be doing is you should be reading not every single word, but reading quite carefully, but quite quickly at the same time, to understand the general meaning of what is happening in each paragraph. And then what you do is you try to sum up the general meaning of each paragraph in 1 or 2 words. Could be 1 word, could be 2 words, doesn't have to be 1 or 2 words, but just in a short heading, try to write the heading for each of the paragraphs. So you're looking at each of the paragraphs, and what you're doing is you're not trying to understand absolutely everything in that paragraph. Your aim is to be able to write the heading that you think, based on the information in the paragraph, try to write the heading beside each paragraph. This is extremely effective, because what it will allow you to do is then go back and compare your idea with the list of headings. And you'll be amazed, you'll be shocked at how accurate and how easy it is to link those together when you have done that. So look at the headings and identify keywords within each heading. So again, go back, look at the headings. Already you should be linking some together already. Some will be very, very obvious, but we need to be careful here. So what you do is look at each of the headings, underline some keywords within each of the headings. Match any headings that are very obvious and you are 100% sure about, just to eliminate them immediately. For the others, write 2 or 3 headings beside the paragraph. Identify the difference between each of the headings. So let's say, for example, you look at 2 headings and 2 of the headings are very, very similar. Just jot those headings down beside the paragraph. You can do it in shorthand, you could write out the full thing, and then look at the paragraph and compare what you think the heading should be with those 2 headings, and then you'll be able to pick one with confidence. If you still can't pick one, move on. The answer will often reveal itself later. So if you're stuck on one, don't spend 5 or 10 minutes on one. That will kill your chances on your ability to answer the later questions. So if you can't identify the correct answer after 1 or 2 minutes, move on and then you can come back later. But if you use that strategy, it's far more effective than doing what I showed you first. So let's go and look at what that would look like practically. So what you'd be doing is you wouldn't look at any of these list of headings. What you would do is you would just come here and you would see, okay, here's the number of paragraphs that I need to look at. And what you would do is you would quickly but quite diligently read each of these paragraphs, and beside here you would just jot down an idea of a heading. What if you had to give this a heading? What would you give it? All right, so you haven't even looked at the options. You haven't looked at these at all. And what you're doing is reading this quite quickly, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 words beside each of these. What heading do you think it'll be? Then what you're doing is you're going back up. You're looking at the headings, you're understanding each of the headings, you're underlining any key words, and after you've understood each of these headings, you understand what they are, then you can come back down and you can match the obvious ones. So some of them will be extremely obvious. Sometimes when my students do this, their heading, the one that they came up with, is exactly the same or nearly exactly the same as one of these headings. So you'll be able to eliminate some of them immediately. If there are two, so let's say the effects of government policy in rich countries, the effects of government policy in poor countries. If you were not to say that they are similar, they're two different differentiating keywords there, what you could do, let's say it's for this one, you could write those two, you could say poor countries, rich countries, here beside each of them, go and have a look in here, and then you can make your decision. And if you go through things in a step-by-step manner like that, it just makes everything much, much, much easier for you, because you're treating the question in a strategic way and you're following a system rather than just going in and being like, oh, all these words I don't understand, oh no, what am I going to do? And panic and then not get the score you need. And you also might be looking at this strategy and thinking, like, that's a lot of information. That's a lot of new things to learn, and I have to do that for every single different type of reading question. I didn't say that it was going to be quick and easy. That's not the way things work. If there was a quick tip or a quick thing that I could give you, believe me, I would give it to you. But if you start very, very slowly, and remember the analogy of learning how to drive a car. Learning how to drive a car, you had to think of everything and do everything very, very, very slowly. But what you did was you slowly built up your confidence so that you could take your car out on the public roads, increase your speed, and that now people that have been driving for a long time don't even have to think about it. Same thing with this. So true, false, not given. Why are these so hard? So a lot of people spend way too much time making sure that it is not given. So when the difficult thing about not given is you're not used to these types of questions. You're just used to true, false questions. And B, not given normally is either, it's impossible to establish if it is true or false because it's not given, so that's kind of confusing for a lot of students, or it's just not there, and looking for something that's not there takes quite a lot of time. Students obsess over this and waste a lot of time with this one. Also, a lot of students just don't understand what not given means, and a failure to understand exactly what each statement means, and therefore being unable to identify if it is true or false. If you don't understand the statements, you will not be able to make a judgment call on whether they are true, false, or not given. So a lot of students don't know what true, false, and not given means, and then when you combine that with the fact that they don't understand what the actual statements mean, there's no wonder why this type of question causes a lot of problems. So you have two choices. You can just say, I hate these questions and I'm never going to be good at them. Or you can take a more strategic approach and think about them logically and work through them and get much better at them. Focusing on keywords instead of understanding what the statement as a whole means. So when you're reading the statement, another very poor bit of advice that students get is focus on keywords. Just look at keywords, focus on keywords. For true, false, not given, you're not really looking at keywords within a statement. You're looking at what the statement means as a whole. So be careful with that. So if the text agrees with or confirms the information in the statement, the answer is true. If the text contradicts or is the opposite to the information in the statement, the answer is false. If there is no information or it is impossible to know, the answer is not given. Do not overcomplicate this. The number one thing that students do is they overcomplicate this and they stress about it and just take it the way it is. If it agrees with it or confirms it, it's true. If it contradicts it or it's the opposite of it, it's false. If you can't tell or there's no information there, it's not given. Think about it in a very simple, straightforward way, and believe me, it will become much, much easier and your performance with these questions will improve. So here's a strategy that I give my students for true, false, not given. Always read the instructions very, very, very carefully. Read all the statements carefully, trying to understand what the whole sentence means rather than simply highlighting keywords. So this is the opposite of matching headings. With matching headings, I tell you, don't look at the questions first. Look at the text first. With true, false, not given, I'm telling you, look at the questions first. Don't look at the text first. So you see there's differing strategies because they require different skills and different approaches. So it's really, really important that you spend some time understanding the statements, because if you don't understand the statements, you won't be able to say if they're true, false, or not given. Try to think of synonyms that might be in the text. So this will help you identify the matching part of the text. So often it won't help you identify the correct answer, but it'll help you locate where that answer is in the text. Match the statements with the correct part of the text. So what you're doing here is you're scanning, you're focusing on location first. So A, understand the statements, and then B, find out where it is in the text. Link them together, link the locations together. Focus on the statement again and then carefully read the matching part of the text to establish if it is true or false. Remember, the meaning should match that of the statement exactly if it is true. Okay, so what you're doing, understand the statement, link the statement to the particular area of the text, and then read that area of the text very, very carefully. Think about the statement. Is it true? Is it false? Or can you just not tell and it's not given? Underline the words that give you the answer, as this will help you focus and you can check back later if you need to do so. Remember, do not spend too much time on one question. If you can't find the answer, mark it as not given and move on to the next question. So this is what happens with students. They spend way, way too much time thinking about if it is not given, and they're unsure about if it's not given. If you're unsure about it or you can't find it, just confidently mark it as not given. If you're really unsure and you can't find the answer, mark it as not given. So again, if you follow that and you take some practice questions, you're not going to be able to read this strategy one time and then immediately get a band 9, immediately get every single true, false, not given question correct. That would be like someone reading a book about driving and thinking that they can pass a driving test immediately. What you have to do is you have to slowly think about this strategy, learn it, apply it to the questions, slowly use it. Whenever I'm teaching my students this, I give them a very, very long time, like 5 or 10 minutes on each question to really think and really learn the strategy. And then you're going to build up your confidence, build up your speed to exam conditions. So a strategic approach to reading. Break each question down. So think about what each type of question is requiring you to do. Identify what is unique about each type of question. What skills are being tested? How does the above influence how you're going to answer each type of question? So here is a very, very effective plan of action. If you are stuck at a 6, 6.5 or whatever, and you need to move on to a 7, 7.58, you want to improve your reading, follow this plan of action. Do 2 or 3 practice tests under exam conditions. It's going to take you 2 or 3 hours, but it's going to be well worth it. It's going to save you a huge amount of time in the future. And what you're doing here is you're trying to get data on your performance. All you're trying to do is establish your strengths and weaknesses. One very important point, only use real practice tests. IDP, the British Council, IELTS.org, Cambridge English, if you Google any of them, you will get reliable practice tests. If you use any other websites, they are fake tests. Or you can use the Cambridge tests, the Cambridge books. Use them. Better to use ones that you haven't used before. And then what you're doing is you're analyzing your mistakes. So what you've got is 2 or 3 tests. You've got all this data on your strengths and weaknesses. So look at your mistakes. Why are you getting those questions wrong? Is it because of grammar, spelling, vocabulary, strategy, time? What happened with that question? If you actually look at each of your mistakes and think about your mistakes, it'll reveal a huge amount of data. Again, takes time, but it's going to save you a huge amount of time in the future. And then what you need to do is look at your common mistakes. So if you're getting every single true, false, not given question wrong, or 90% of them wrong, or 80% of them wrong, that is an area of weakness. If you're getting 90% or near 100% of true, false, not given questions correct, that's an area of strength. You do not need to work on that as much as your other areas. So what you're doing is you're establishing why you're making those mistakes and your main areas of weakness, the questions that you are getting wrong consistently. And then what you're doing is you're going to focus on your weak areas. Start slowly and build up. So Rome wasn't built in a day. You are not going to be able to just look at a load of past questions, do some practice tests, and immediately jump from a band 6 to a band 9. That's not how it works. What you're doing here is you are finding out what you need to work on and then attacking those areas of weakness and turning them into strength. But as I said, you need to slowly build up. You can't just look at a strategy and immediately apply it in the test. So hopefully that helped you understand how to improve your reading and what IELTS is looking for in terms of reading. But that's just the first step. The second step is practice. So luckily for you, we have developed a full reading test for you, and you'll be able to download all the instructions below. Just click the link below. You can download the step-by-step instructions in the PDF. Get your reading test, and you'll be able to do that reading test under exam conditions. And then we've also shown you in the PDF how you can send that to us and get the answers and be able to analyze your mistakes and get feedback on your reading and improve your reading, because it is part of a whole system. Learn what to do that thing, and then get feedback on it, and that leads to improvement. So download the PDF below, follow the step-by-step instructions, and then you'll be able to find out where you are in terms of your reading score and improve even further. Thank you.